Hello, and welcome to our discussion about healthy relationships. And this is put on by Planned Parenthood of the North Country, New York. We offer confidential reproductive health services, things like STI testing and treatment, pregnancy testing, birth control, LGBTQ health services, primary care, and so many more things. We're located at 160 Stone Street in Watertown. That is where the health center is located. And those are our current hours. We do have some later hours on Wednesday and Thursday. Specifically on Wednesday from 5 to 7 is time for teen clinic. So anyone under the age of 19 should be signing up for appointments at that time. You can schedule your appointment online at ppncny.org, or you could call 1-800-230-PLAN. And as always, you can always walk in and we will be sure to see you that day. So hello, my name is Nicole. I am presenting this discussion today. I use she and her pronouns. My title at Planned Parenthood is Comprehensive Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Education Coordinator. And we'll start with our community agreement. So just kind of laying some ground rules. No one knows everything, but together we know a lot. 2, respect each other's identity, pronouns, and experiences. 3, expect and accept a lack of closure. So we might not answer all the things that there is to answer about healthy relationships today. 4, ask for literacy moments. You can always message us after. You could comment on this video and we'll be sure to get into contact with you to discuss further. 5, be solution oriented. And 6, acknowledge feelings and not just ideas. All right, so the only other kind of agreement that we want to put out there is this content warning. We are discussing something that might make people feel uncomfortable. So if uncomfortable feelings arise throughout the presentation, take care of yourself, including your mental and physical well-being at all times. This is what our agenda is for this healthy relationship discussion. First, we already went through our introductions. Next, we'll kind of define what relationships are, and then we'll go through what a sphere of influence is. And then we'll discuss self-love, because that's part of a healthy relationship, is having a good relationship with self. 5, we have a very quick activity. It is a kind of relationship quiz or assessment. 6 is really seeing the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationship traits. And then 7, we'll talk briefly about love languages as a resource to kind of start learning more about the relationships in your lives, including yourself. So let's get right into it. Relationships are 1, the way that 2 or more people are connected, or the state of being connected. 2, it is our interactions with other people. Very simple. And 3, it could be described as the way in which 2 or more people interact and behave towards one another. So very general here. And that's definitely the idea, right? Because relationships can mean lots of things and are, many examples. So here are some types, and we're speaking specifically about interpersonal relationships, so between people. We have family and kinship. I think that's going to be a big one at the top of people's minds, right? Sometimes some of the first relationships that we form in life. And then there's, of course, friends, which are a good form of relationship. We have romantic relationships. We also have professional relationships with people in our professional lives. Which looks very different than, say, a family or friend or romantic relationship. That is definite. And then we can't forget the ever important acquaintances and community supports. There's still dozens of other relationships in our life might not be as close-knit as, say, those first few, but are also still very important to have and maintain. And I'm sure there's probably more beyond this list, but these are definitely some of the main ones. So, sphere of influence. So this is a great visual to understand, similar to what we just looked at, these different types of relationships that we have. However, the sphere of influence puts you at the center. So you can put yourself as target audience, and you can think about who is in your inner circle. So kind of like I mentioned, a lot of folks will kind of have family and friends in their close inner circle. So those are the people that they're going to for support. We have beyond that as our personal community. So this could be neighbors, teachers, coaches. So it's all of those are different people that we rely on in one way throughout our lives. And so they're a necessary part of our community, and they're just a tad closer than our wider community. So in our wider community, that helps, our entire city run the way it should. It helps so that, you can get to the places that you can. You need those relationships too. Those are people like first responders, definitely need them. Our service providers, definitely need them. Our staff at businesses and doctors and nurses, yes, absolutely need our wider community of folks. And just depending on who you are and what your relationship to those folks are will determine what your sphere of influence will look like. So relationships differ from one sphere of influence to the next. And why is that? We purposely do this. We purposely have some folks that are close to us, and we purposely have other folks that are a little farther away from us, right? We don't necessarily need the wider community support for day-to-day activities. But maybe your friends and family are there to support you through day-to-day activities. So there's a reason why there's people in the closer circle and why there's people in the farther circle, but we really need everyone in this sphere of influence. All right, so that's that. So next I want to talk about, how is your relationship with yourself? So I think a lot of the time we hear when we're talking about healthy relationships is, how can you have a healthy relationship with another person if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself? I'm sure you could have a healthy relationship with someone else, regardless of your relationship with yourself. But it is so much easier, and it is so much more guaranteed. It is so much more fulfilling to have a good relationship with yourself. And then you're able to really base that on how you can have relationships with other people. You can decide many different things. So these are a few questions I think you should ask yourself to kind of determine how that relationship with yourself is, and if maybe you need to work on it a little bit first. So do I love and respect myself? Obviously, you need to really love and respect yourself. If someone else is going to love and respect you, you would hopefully love and respect yourself as much as you can. So again, if you are not doing great in these aspects, these are things to really work on within yourself before looking towards a partner to fulfill these things for you, right? Do I have a generally positive body image? Body image is crazy these days. We are inundated with social media and just images online all the time that we are comparing ourselves to other people or whatever. As long as you're able to maintain a generally positive body image, you're doing great. It is difficult to not compare yourself these days, but trying to maintain that positive body image is so important. Big one, are my boundaries well established? Boundaries are a big deal. If you aren't able to decide when you're okay with something and when you're not okay with something, someone else may make that choice for you. So you need to decide for yourself when you are okay with something so that you can communicate that to other people. If you are unsure of that, you may have your boundaries crossed from one time or another. And so it is really important for a person to kind of think about, what are my boundaries? And when they are being crossed, let someone know that is a boundary for me and I don't accept this, right? There's many ways to work on that, on your boundaries. Next, we have, am I perpetuating any learned patterns? Ooh, so we all carry with us things that we learn. Sometimes those can be a pattern, and it could be good or bad, right? A learned pattern could be something like, I always have the same morning routine. Am I doing that same thing over and over and over and over, and I'm never changing it? In the example of a morning routine, that might not be a bad thing. But if we're talking about healthy and unhealthy relationship traits, perpetuating unhealthy traits isn't going to be a good thing for the long run, especially if you want to create and maintain a healthy relationship for a long time with another person. It is important that you kind of look at the patterns that you are doing in your life and realize, did I learn this from somewhere? Am I doing this for a reason? Or am I just on autopilot, doing what I've always done? I learned patterns. So just think about that one. That one might be a little bit tougher to figure out, but can be so liberating to once you realize that, maybe I'm not really doing that for any sort of reason and I can change. Something else to think about is definitely, your self-care routines. Even if that is as simple as taking a breath for 5 minutes, taking a sip of water, learning gratitude. There is so many things that could mean self-care. And as long as you're giving yourself that time and that kind of respect by caring for your body and caring for your own needs and yourself, you're creating a better relationship with yourself. So as much and as often as you can be doing self-care would be excellent for oneself and your relationship with yourself. And this is a good one when we're thinking about, having relationships with other people. So like, how do you consider yourself? Or do you consider yourself a good friend? Is there things that you could maybe change that you'd be a better friend? It's a good question to ask upon viewing your own self and what you might want to look for in some other people too. So these are just some examples, just some ideas of things to think about when asking yourself, how's my relationship with myself? And there's also plenty of quizzes that you could take online that kind of go further into depth with this question. So how do you take care of yourself? There are multiple different kind of areas of our lives that we could take care of ourselves. So you have achievable goals. We just talked about setting boundaries. That's something that everyone should be able to do, right? Figure out what you're okay with and what you're not okay with and set those boundaries and those goals for yourself. Eating well, of course, is always a wonderful goal to have in order to maintain a long and healthy life, as well as exercising daily and something called sleep opportunities. So we always say that we need at least 8 hours of sleep at night. We also know that not every single person in the world is able to achieve that 8 hours of sleep. So this term opportunity is give yourself around 8 hours of sleep. Allow yourself to do that. That could be a goal for you. If you're not getting 8 hours of sleep right now, that's a great goal to start with. Try that sleep opportunity. Give yourself about 8 hours to sleep for and see how that works for you. Okay, and on top of that, you should also be kind to yourself. Things like affirmations, just kind of repeating to yourself really nice things like, I am worthy of a healthy and loving relationship. That is an affirmation you could say to yourself. Actually hearing that makes you believe it over time. Some of those other self-care kind of things that we talked about, many people may consider self-care differently. So whatever you consider to be self-care. Some people consider things like rituals like baths or showers to even be a very kind thing to do to yourself, or even just take that time to relax and to be grateful for your body, for yourself, just to be alive. So being kind to yourself in general there. There are some ideas here for, creating a peaceful space. Anywhere you are, you could meditate, just kind of breathing slowly, and just concentrating deeply. Any sort of peaceful music is always a great way to have a peaceful space. Stretching your body, right? Moving a little bit, like a little yoga positions or something, is a great way to get your body at peace or feeling peace. Reading as well is a good one. Supportive people. So as we're kind of moving into what a healthy relationship will look like with other folks, remember what your supportive people are. Calling somebody, you could walk with someone and talk with someone, or you could connect with somebody online. So a good way to actually take care of yourself is to reaching out to really supportive people in your lives. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how to determine who is and who isn't, right? Who is a little bit more healthy in my life and what might be unhealthy relationship traits that are coming up in some of the relationships you might have. So let's take a relationship assessment. So this is the part where I read you some questions about a relationship. So just think right now of any relationship. We gave you a few different types a couple slides ago. So whether that is a family, friend, or romantic relationship, think of a specific person. Okay. And then we're going to answer 14 questions, and they are all just yes or no. Okay. So if you want to just jot them down as either yes or no. Okay. First one. Do you feel that the other person in this relationship does not understand you? Yes or no. So you can just number these and put yes or no for each. Number 2, are you able to speak freely to him or her or they about things that bother you? Yes or no. Do you genuinely take interest in each other's lives? That's the third one. Do you take genuine interest in each other's lives? Yes or no. Number 4, do both of you pursue individual interests? Yes or no. 5, is this relationship the only important relationship in your life? Yes or no. 6, do you believe that you are a worthwhile person outside of this relationship? Yes or no. 7, do you expect this person to meet all of your emotional or physical needs? Yes or no. 8, is your relationship often threatened by others? Yes or no. Number 9, can you be yourself in this relationship? Yes or no. 10, are you uncomfortable sharing your feelings with this person? Yes or no. 11, do you both work to improve the relationship? Yes or no. And a 12, do you feel good about yourself? Yes or no. 13, do you feel you have become a better person because of this relationship? Yes or no. Lastly, 14, can you both accept changes in roles and feelings within the relationship? Yes or no. Okay, so in order to score our relationship assessment, you will give yourself 1 point for yes response if it was for these particular questions. So if you scored yes, or you wrote yes for number 2, number 3, number 4, number 6, number 9, number 11, number 12, number 13, and number 14, you can give yourself 1 point for each of those ones that you answered yes to. You will receive 1 point for each of those. And now you can receive 1 point if you answered no to the following questions. If you answered no to number 1, give yourself a point. If you answered no to number 5, give yourself a point. If you answered no to 7, a point. 8, you answered no, give yourself a point. And 10, if you answered no, give yourself a point. Now you can add up all your points and your score. So once you have your score number, you can determine which of these 4 categories you are in. So if your score, the total number of scores you had was 1 through 3 points only, there are a few constructive elements in this relationship. You may want to think about your reasons for continuing the relationship or work towards improving. If you scored 4 to 6 points on that, this relationship has problems that might be resolved by working on honesty and communication. If you had 7 to 10 points, then there is a basis for a good relationship. Focus on the positive elements and work on improving the distractions. And if you had 10 to 14 points, you're doing well and have what it takes to build a successful and satisfying relationship. So, great job. And we're going to move on to talk a little bit more in depth about what really constitutes healthy versus unhealthy relationships, now that we've gotten to assess one of ours. So healthy relationships include trust, honesty, respect. Trust is confidence that they won't do anything to hurt you or ruin the relationship. Honesty, you can be truthful and candid without fearing how that person may react. Respect is valuing another person's beliefs and opinions and love one another for who you each are as a person. We have equality, independence, and responsibility. Equality is feeling balanced. Everyone puts the same effort into the success of the relationship. Independence is you have space to be yourself outside of the relationship, and responsibility is owning up to your own actions and words. Finally, we have healthy conflict, safeness, and kindness. So healthy conflict is having openly discussing and respectfully confronting disagreements or issues non-judgmentally. Safe is a relationship moves at a pace that feels comfortable. And finally, we have kindness. Caring and empathetic to each other provides comfort and support. These are 9 different traits of a healthy relationship. Another and 10th trait, I would say, communication is key. We hear this all the time. It's a very coined phrase. Communication is key, including consent too. Consent starts with a conversation. So communication really is key. But here's some tips to make your communication a little bit better since, people always say communication is key, but maybe don't always give a lot of great examples on how to communicate better. So these are a few. Talk early and often, especially in a relationship of any kind. You want to come to the other person as soon as possible and talk to them about whatever it is you need to talk to them about. Set those clear boundaries. Here they are again. If you have boundaries, you've set them, communicate them, right? That's a big one. Might take a few steps to get there by setting them first and then making sure to communicate them properly so that people are able to accept those boundaries. But it is important. So assuming, so in general, you know, when you assume something, you aren't really hearing what that person is telling you. You are putting on your own thoughts to what they're doing. So you are making an assumption, you are making a judgment, or you are kind of deciding without first allowing that person to tell you what they think. So it can be really harmful and it can be hurtful to some people. So it's important to just kind of check your own self. Don't assume, just don't make assumptions. Ask instead, right? So that goes really well with this next one, active listening. Active listening is not just you need to be able to actually hear the words that the person is saying. And instead of sitting there thinking about what you're going to say next, really hear what they're saying, let it sink in, and then allow yourself to respond based on what they said, not based on what you think you should say, not based on, I think it's my turn to talk now and I have to say something supportive. Active listening is so much deeper than that and actually takes a decent amount of practice, because we can really gloss over during our conversations sometimes. But if you want to create a better relationship with anyone, try active listening to what they're saying, actively hearing what they're saying and responding. Using I statements. This is one of my personal favorites. I think this goes really well with the not assuming, right? So I'm not assuming something if I'm speaking from a place that I personally know. Okay, so instead of saying, when you do that, you make me really upset. Instead, you could say, you know, I don't feel so good when you do that, or it doesn't make me feel very confident in this relationship when you act that way. Or really taking that blame and the assumption that that person is trying to cause you harm off of them, and taking it back to saying, I just want you to know how I'm feeling right now. And this is how I feel about said thing. Maybe it's something they are doing, but it's your feelings. And if you're not assuming their feelings, right, they're not going to assume yours. So use those I statements to really say what you mean, so no one has to assume. Next, we have nonverbal cues. Super important, just as important as the actual words that we are saying. Nonverbal cues can give away a lot about how a person is actually feeling during your conversation. So really pay attention to those. Pay attention to your own nonverbal cues, maybe how your face is looking when you're speaking, if your hands are moving, if you're turned towards the person or turned away from them. Those can all showcase different emotions throughout the conversation. And lastly, we have be more assertive. So there's a difference between aggressive communication, passive communication, and assertive communication. Passive, aggressive, and assertive can all be used in different conversations for different reasons. But generally speaking, being assertive is just really holding on to your own boundaries, really saying this is okay and this isn't. Allowing for no one to really change your mind or kind of cross that boundary, because you're being assertive with yourself and with your boundary or whatever it is that you are deciding. So just in general, when you are having communication with folks, try to be assertive and less passive or aggressive, right? Stick to the assertive area. And of course, we're talking communication. Consent also starts with a conversation. So here are some of our unhealthy relationship traits. We have isolation, no responsibility, guilting. So isolation is keeping you away from friends, family, or other people. No responsibility is when someone repeatedly makes excuses for their unhealthy behavior. Guilting is when someone makes you feel responsible for their actions or makes you feel like it's your job to keep them happy. Possessiveness, sabotage, volatility, can't say that right now for some reason, and then intensity. We also have manipulation, belittling, and betrayal. So possessiveness is jealousy to the point where they try and control who you spend time with and what you do. Sabotage, when someone purposely ruins your reputation, achievements, or success. So volatility, that's it. And intensity, when someone has a strong, unpredictable reaction that makes you feel scared, confused, or intimidated. Manipulation is trying to control your decisions, actions, or emotions. Belittling is when someone does and says things that makes you feel bad about yourself. And then betrayal is when someone is disloyal or acts in an intentionally dishonest way. So these are 9 unhealthy relationship traits. And here is one more to kind of go along with it. Although love bombing / gaslighting could maybe even be divided up into 2. These are very much more talked about these days as a unhealthy relationship sign. So we wanted to add this. So love bombing is the action or practice of lavishing someone with attention or affection, especially in order to influence or manipulate them. So this can also usually come maybe in the beginning of a relationship, in the first kind of stages when people are very head over heels. When we're speaking about a romantic relationship, that is a common occurrence, is this love bombing. And then what gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse, gain power over someone, and avoid responsibility for the abuse that is being inflicted. So with gaslighting, it can come in a lot of forms. It does not have to just be in romantic relationships, nor does love bombing. But with gaslighting, it can really make a person question their own sanity. It can lead to anxiety, depression, and can trigger nervous breakdowns. I think it's important to kind of talk about what gaslighting sounds like, since it's maybe not always so obvious. These forms of unhealthy relationship, or these traits in unhealthy relationships, can kind of happen slowly. So if you're hearing things like, "Are you sure? You have a bad memory," or "You're overreacting. I didn't do that. Stop acting crazy. Can you hear yourself? It's not your fault." Or "It's your fault. Why are you upset? I was only kidding. Never said that. That never happened." You're imagining things. That's not putting blame on themselves. It is trying to make the person question their own sanity. And it can be a really tough thing to go through in any relationship. So being on the lookout for some of these phrases, this could be a form of gaslighting, similar to manipulation as we just spoke about, but it is kind of its own thing. Next, we're going to talk even further about unhealthy relationships. So if we're continuing to see these patterns of, unhealthy relationship traits continuously coming up in the relationship, not going to be a great sign. There could be a sign of some abusive relationship tendencies there. So abusive relationships really hit that line when one partner is communicating in a hurtful or threatening way, when one partner is mistreating the other, when one partner is accusing the other of cheating when it's untrue, It could be when one person's denying their actions are abusive, even though they clearly are abusive actions. Another form is just controlling the other person, and as well as isolating their partner from other people. These are all signs of a more abusive relationship. In the top right corner, you see we have a crisis hotline. We have a local victims assistance center line for here in Jefferson County. We also have sexual assault services in our Plattsburgh area for anybody who wants local help and someone to talk to that can talk you through some of this. If you're experiencing this, it can be a really difficult thing to go through and you may feel alone, but just know that you are not, and that there are so many people out there that are willing to talk to you and to help you and to make it better for you. So please use those resources and share those resources with anybody that might need them. So I want to talk a little bit about the cycle of abuse, because again, with these abusive relationships, what's unfortunate is they can sometimes kind of, you can find yourself, or a person can find themselves caught in this cycle, whether they really know it or not. So let's start at the kind of bottom of it where it says honeymoon. So this could be really similar to like love bombing. You could even put the word love bombing here. So starts with some affection, adoration, gift giving, helpful compliments, all kinds of great things, right? And then it gets a little bit of tension there. There can be some moodiness, nitpickiness, there's some criticisms, maybe threats, those gaslighting phrases that can be really hurtful, is in mind games that are really hurtful. So any of these things could happen, right? And you could have a little bit of the back and forth there. So much that it's maybe not so obvious to you that they're really, intentionally harming you. All right. So when it becomes maybe a little more obvious is when these things may explode, right? So something like physical, sexual, and/or emotional abuse is never okay. You should always report these things to local authorities, or anyone that is willing to listen to you and to get you to the help that you need. But so often in these cycles of abuse is right after a harmful episode like that occurred, the person feels remorseful. They feel bad for maybe what they did. And so they try to guilt, they try to apologize and promise that it'll never, ever, ever happen again, justifying that that's not really them and they would never really do that, and making excuses as to why all of that happened. And it's so unfortunate for folks that sometimes find themselves falling right back into the cycle again. They, for whatever reason, weren't able to realize this cycle of abuse that was happening, and they find themselves kind of trapped in that. At any point in time, you can and you should try to get out of an abusive relationship, and a relationship that is unhealthy, a relationship that is exhibiting any of these really unhealthy traits. So it is really important to be able to recognize some of these things. So at least now you're able to see how it could happen and hopefully avoid that in any of your relationships. All right, and I think we're going to end now talking about a very nice little way to learn more about yourself. It doesn't have to be in your romantic relationship, although this is a really great tool for any romantic relationship, whether you just started dating or you've been married for 30 years. Learning someone's love language is an incredible thing. And it's great to even just know about your friends and your family and how that they like to receive love or give love. So that's really what this love languages is about. So there is a quiz that you can take to find out which love language is your primary love language, or the way in which you like to receive love. So some people, it is an act of service. So actions speak louder than words for them. They would much rather see you do something for them to show them that you love them. A person whose love language is receiving gifts, they may prefer a heartfelt gift that makes them feel loved instead of an act of service. 3, we have quality time. So some people want your undivided attention, and that's the way that they receive love or would like to. There is also words of affirmation. So using your words to affirm love for them, tell them how much you love them, then they'll know it. And that's the way they want to hear it. And finally, we have physical touch. So an appropriate physical gesture that shows some love. So everyone has these different love languages, but you may have a little bit more of one than the other. So acts of service may be your main love language, but you also really enjoy quality time and you wouldn't mind receiving a gift every once in a while. So everybody's love language is a little unique to themselves, and it probably changes over time. So it is a great thing to go check it out, go take the quiz, learn what your own love language is, and share that with the people in your life that you have relationships with, and let them know, this is how I best receive love. How about you? And then once you know their love language, maybe you're able to better give them love as well. I hope as well that you will use some of the healthy relationship traits that we discussed today to try some of those things in your relationships, try to work on some of them if some of them you're not as good at. And the same with the unhealthy relationship. If there's any of those that you feel are being exhibited in your relationship, or that you feel you maybe are perpetrating in your relationship, it is a really good idea to just revisit that and try to learn new ways to function in that relationship, besides maybe relying on some of those harmful or unhealthy traits. And it will be so worth it in your relationship in the long run if you are working towards a healthy relationship. And hopefully your partner is also doing the same. So, all right, I think that's everything for today. Thank you so much for listening and discussing healthy relationships. This is a topic that we could talk about for a very long time. So if you have any questions or you want to learn something more about healthy relationships, please reach out to us. This is our education and outreach email that is shared amongst multiple educators. So if you just email us at ppncny.education@gmail.org, or no, it's gmail.com, that is correct. Then you will get to one of us and we will answer your question. You can also leave a comment on this video and we will get back to you, or message us. This is my work phone number. So it's 315-782-1818 extension 220. As always, check out our social medias or our website for more information, learn about any upcoming events, find out what our health center hours are, all the good stuff. Thank you for being here and I appreciate it. Have a great day.